Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. We, as XRP holders, are in uncharted waters. There is no historic precedent for the situation that we, as XRP holders, find ourselves in. And I'm not even thinking primarily, although this is obviously gigantic, I'm not even thinking right now, and for the purposes of this video, I'm not thinking primarily about the SEC versus Ripple case, which is uncharted enough, if you will. But think about what's happening, just other global economic factors. Like XRP's never been tested in an environment such as this, and neither, of course, has the rest of crypto. It's true of Bitcoin, which I find sure enough drives the market. And so I wanted to highlight a few things here because I think a lot of the thoughtful consideration when it comes to where crypto prices are going to be going in the short, medium, and long term, I think you need to be having serious, heavy discussion about other factors and just. Like, I know that the Bitcoin maxes, they like to say Bitcoin's a hedge against inflation and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But it's just not true to this point. Maybe it will be one day, but there's no shortage of evidence that Bitcoin and crypto, and it includes XRP, of course, it just follows stocks. That's what's happening here. Bitcoin is not performing like a hedge against inflation. And so I think the thoughtful conversation will focus on what's actually happening on a macro level. And what does that actually mean for XRP holders and for Bitcoin holders? Or pick your crypto. I think that's where the thoughtful conversation should go if you're talking about price. You need to consider these things and not just say, okay, yes, history, even if it doesn't repeat exactly the same as the past, it kind of rhymes with itself. And I do in a general sense agree with that, fine. But we haven't had this before, and this is no small thing. This is a big deal. So I want to unpack some stuff for you. But before going further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a financial background of any kind. I'm not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this, XRP's at 32 cents, Bitcoin's at 20,565, market cap for the asset class 917 billion, and Bitcoin dominance at 42.73%. So, as you can see, if you've been paying attention, it's about the same as yesterday. It's not particularly different. Crypto Fear and Greed Index, literally the same as yesterday. It's at 9 out of 100. So people are still clearly in extreme fear, and I certainly understand why. Take a look at this headline from Cointelegraph. I'm not going to read the article, but I tell you what, you can figure out a lot about what's going through the minds of retail speculators just by hopping on various crypto news outlets and just reading the headlines. So look, here's one from Cointelegraph. Bitcoin dead Google searches hit new all-time high. Yes, and so this is a fact. People typing into the Google search engine, Bitcoin dead, just typing in those two words, that just hit a new all-time high. And you can go to trends.google.com and you can track all the, you can type in anything and just see how it's trending. And so that's effectively what the article is covering. Here's another headline from you today. Again, don't need to read this one either. Crypto industry's ad spending collapses by 90%. Yeah, ain't nobody got no damn money. In fact, there's no shortage of firms in the world of crypto and blockchain that are laying off people by the boatload, unfortunately. Certainly not happy to report on that. It is nice to see that Ripple continues to, they plan right now to hire hundreds of people. They've also got quite the balance sheet, let's say. As of January, when Brad Garlinghouse shared this information, which they didn't have to do because they're a privately held company, their balance sheet was $1 billion in the bank. 1 billion with a B. That's insane. So yeah, they think they're going to weather the storm just fine. They seem to be very fiscally responsible, and they haven't been adjusting their buying and selling of XRP. They've been doing what they said they're going to do for years on end. So that's good. They're being a good steward of the XRP ecosystem so far, as I'm concerned here. And I actually I was watching a video from the blockchain backer earlier today, and I'm not going to rehash his analysis. Check out his awesome video. It's a fantastic video if you want to know exactly why he said what he's saying. But I just want to point out a couple key takeaways. Because he did say something that I actually brought up, I don't know, more than once within the last 3 or 4 days. But look, he said that at this point, it makes sense to be looking for bottom territory in crypto markets. And while he also acknowledged, this is something I've been pointing out for days on end, it is possible that we could go lower. But see, here's the thing. There are macroeconomic factors that may result in crypto markets going lower. And I was like, that's poignant. But of course I think that. I've been saying that myself for, in particular, days on end here. And just going back to what happened in March of 2020 when you had the pandemic, there was a collapse there. So that's a major macroeconomic factor. that impacted, it really did impact people globally, obviously. That's certainly no understatement. So given the uncharted waters that we're in right now, I mean, fine, look, we can look at how, I'm going to talk about this more in just a couple minutes, but if you look back and see how the stock market performs, in particular, there's an article that cites what happens when inflation ramps up to the S&P 500, that stands for Standards and Poor's, which is just a market index of 500 largest publicly traded companies in the United States. So when you look at that, the S&P 500, and how it responds to inflation, it's kind of interesting. But then that's why you need to look at that and consider what that actually means for the crypto asset class. But moving on, there was this from chart analyst Income Sharks. He actually had 3 separate tweets that I thought were really interesting. I thought they made a lot of sense, and I want to share them with you real quick. He wrote the following this evening. Stock futures up. One of the most volatile weeks is over, which included a quad witching day, FOMC meeting, a 3-day holiday, and Fed rate hike. Should get some bullish relief here as we've ripped off the Band-Aid. So I'll just note we've certainly seen that over the last couple of days. The question is, do we see a drop down? Well, there's a lot of people that think we actually will see at least one final shakeout. And I've talked about that, so I'm not going to really mention more in this video on that concept, but it's certainly plausible. I don't pretend to know either way. But I don't need to, because again, if you've been following me for a while, you know that my approach is the most unsophisticated approach you could possibly take to investing, which I actually firmly believe is the best approach. It's the buy and then do absolutely nothing, no matter how scary markets get. Just sit there and hold. That is my approach, right? And of course, if any asset, whether it's a stock or any cryptocurrency, if it actually becomes too big a percentage of one's portfolio, yes, fine, it makes sense to sell, diversify it, which is technically doing something. I haven't gotten to that part yet, though. Let's just say that. Anyway, and then Income Sharks also tweeted this out. Bitcoin losing $30,000 support and going sub $20,000 was capitulation. The cost of inflation hides how nasty that drop was. The upside is where less risk is now. Trying to short here or sell here is like buying $60,000. Could still be a summer of chop, but I think we still see $40,000 end of year. So look, in a general sense, that's exactly in line with my thinking. And look, I have no interest in getting into the nitty-gritty of technical analysis. Like myself, I really don't find that enjoying. Like I like getting the perspective of analysts out there. But for me, I just like, to me, like it's not worth it for me personally to do it, because then I'm introducing risk. Like, why am I doing it? If I'm doing this because I'm going to get and be a trader or something like that, well, I know I'm not going to do that. So it's just like, is that the best use of my time when my whole attitude is to buy and then do nothing? No. So that's where I'm coming at from a personal level. But I do appreciate the analysts that I think do a pretty good job. And the best ones out there, they're not making all sorts of crazy, stupid predictions. They're talking about probability of outcomes rather than some sort of a prediction of this or that that's like set with finality. It's okay to share suspicions about where that's going. That's fine too. I'm not saying you can't do that. But the ones that I think are worth something, they speak about probability of outcomes, whereas the ones that I'm less impressed by, let's say, it's just nothing but will be this amount, perhaps even within the specific date or timeline. And then I'm just like, it's like, damn, dude. I know sometimes analysts get crap for hedging their bets too much, but you should when you're talking about probabilities and not certainties. You should, actually. I think that makes a ton of sense here. But yeah, so given how much of the drop we've seen now, even though, yeah, I admit we certainly may go lower, what's more risky? Betting against Bitcoin, perhaps? I mean, I'm just saying. And then there was this from Income Sharks. He said, 3 of my buy targets have all hit. Like I keep saying, timing the exact bottom is nearly impossible. 99% of us will get it wrong. But if you focus on ranges, you have a much higher chance of getting close. Yeah, exactly. So that's the message that I'd say it's much greater than 99% of people would get the bottom wrong when trying to time. It's more like 99.999. Because the bottom's the bottom, and it's only the bottom for a very short moment in time. So almost 100% of humans would actually get it wrong. But I agree with the concept of what he's saying, obviously. And so that's why he's saying For the people that, he's clear saying, for the people that want exposure to the asset class, getting exposure over a longer period of time is the most reasonable way to go. I could not agree with that more. And then there's this. This is the headline from the Daily Hodl. Bitcoin may have further to fall until one catalyst triggers reversal, says crypto analyst Benjamin Cowan. And so you'll see as I go through part of this story, analyst Benjamin Cowan says, when historically, like when inflation finally hits its peak, and mind you, what was the number? 8.6% increase year over year, and that's for the month of May, right? I apologize if I'm pretty sure it was May. I covered it when it was in the headlines very recently. But anyway, point is year over year inflation up 8.6%. And then there's arguments that, okay, well, that's a number that's reported. It's probably much higher. Some people think it's well over 10%. But setting that whole argument aside, he's saying here that when inflation finally hits its peak before reversing and going down, that typically, so that marks the bottom for the S&P 500, which again is just... it's an index fund. We're talking about stocks here, of course. So that's what marks it historically, he said. Now, this is worth noting since crypto tends to follow stocks. Crypto has never existed under these macroeconomic conditions before, so there is no historic precedent for this. Which is why I'm saying, like, in that sense, I don't know what's going to happen with XRP or Bitcoin or any of my crypto holdings. You pick yours. Whatever you're holding, I don't know, but that's why we should be focusing on this. I think there are too many analysts that, not the ones that I follow, but there are too many analysts out there. I see them in my Twitter feed where I don't see them sufficiently weighting this fact in their considerations of where they think crypto markets are going to be going. They're just acting like it's business as usual. But if we're really in an environment where, like, we're in recession or about to be in a recession, and that is, I think that's where we are. If that's indeed the case, and you're also seeing markets tank, that's something we've not seen. That's not something Bitcoin or XRP or Picker Crypto. It's not something that crypto's lived through before. We don't know, and given again, like I said, that it's all tied together, how confident should we be that that markets are going to be moving up notably to the upside anytime soon? Which is why, again, I still think it can. Maybe you do. Maybe it's like Income Shark said a few tweets back when I shared that. Maybe it is a summer of chop. Maybe it's not going to be particularly exciting price action for X number of months. And then maybe you do start to get out of it by the end of the year. We're really happy. Maybe we do. And maybe inflation starts to get under control, though I'm skeptical of that because how much has the Fed increased interest rates anyway this year? So there's the 0.7, so the 75 basis points increase, and I think the one before that was 50 basis points. The one before that was 25 basis points, if my memory serves, which means you're talking about 1.5% increase in interest rates, while you've got close to 10% inflation rate. Well, even if you get it up to like 4%, say by the end of the year, somewhere in that neighborhood, even if it's more than that, is that going to be enough to sufficiently tamp down inflation in that timeline? And if the answer is no, well, what does that mean for stocks? Given that crypto, do you see what I'm getting at here? Which is why I'm looking at this. I'm just like, okay. And then if things get even worse and people can't pay, don't have the money because of inflation to pay for basic necessities, what if we have increased supply chain issues and basic necessities? A lot of them aren't even available. Like, I'm not trying to be a doomsday type of guy, but I'm just saying, what if there are these types of events which almost never happen and are practically unprecedented, if not literally unprecedented? What happens if they happen this year? Now this is what I was getting at. The macroeconomic factors are going to scare the hell out of everybody, and I think that the stock market's going to tank even further if we have that type of stuff. Same for crypto. So if we don't get that, yeah, we could be rocketing out of here at some point this calendar. I could buy that. I don't know for sure if it happened, but that sounds plausible. But if we don't get that, well, we'll see. Anyway, so the piece reads as follows. Crypto analyst Benjamin Cowan says that one macroeconomic signal may be what triggers a trend reversal in Bitcoin. In a new strategy session, Cowan tells his 754,000 YouTube subscribers that he's got his eye on the rate of inflation and its correlation with equity markets and Bitcoin. Cowan says that historically, the S&P 500 index doesn't bottom out until inflation reaches a peak and reverses. So he's, again, to be clear, what he's noting here is that particular fund, the S&P 500, is at its worst basically when inflation is at its highest. And then it flips basically. So piece continues. Since Bitcoin often behaves in a similar fashion to the index, Cowan says that Bitcoin also may not bottom out until inflation cools off. So pause. This is the discussion that I'm glad is being had. This is the type of thing that I'm talking about. And again, nobody does know for sure, but given that we do know for sure that Bitcoin and crypto is historically following stocks, it's a pretty good indicator of what we might expect just by looking at historically what has happened with stocks. Duh, right? But not enough people are talking about this. Anyway, here's the quote. One of the things that we know that's going on right now, which is making the macro look incredibly bleak at the moment, are things like inflation. And going again, this is the S&P 500 overlaid with inflation. And there's a chart on your screen there. One of the things we will clearly note is that when inflation peaks, that tends to correspond to the bottom of the S&P. So take it for what it's worth, and nobody knows, but I do appreciate people acknowledging stuff like that. So Benjamin Cowan, obviously the blockchain backer, he was talking about macroeconomic factors, and lots of other analysts that I follow all saying the same type of thing, and you don't need to be a technical analyst to understand these things. These are just core ideas. So that's why for me, my strategy doesn't change no matter what, to be clear. I'm just going to continue to hold, and I'm not going to do anything with what I already hold unless it's selling it when it's worth way more in the future. I'm not going to do anything there. Where will I do something? Well, if sufficiently enticed, if prices continue to tank, I will buy even more crypto. And if I'm underwater for a year or two or whatever, and I'm not predicting that, but if I end up being, my attitude is so what? I just don't care. Because markets rebound. You know, the promise of crypto, this asset class and blockchain technology, it's all still there. From a fundamental perspective, nothing has changed. And in fact, I'd argue the best is yet ahead, not just because of that, but because the true promise, I think it is going to exist if you fast forward a few decades in the future. There's so much money to be made as a result. So just like the internet existing, you know, think about its form in 1995, late 90s. Not a ton of people using it. A lot of people thinking it's still just a fad. But eventually we did get to realize the full potential of the internet. And in fact, you could argue that we haven't even seen the truly full potential because we're still working on Web3, which is basically a decentralized version of it. But still, you get what I'm saying, right? So that's why what I'm saying here is with crypto, I just don't care. I have such a long-term outlook when it comes to crypto. It doesn't scare me in the least. And I also make sure that I've got income and I have cash aside, a sufficient amount to get me by if there's actually terrible times. Because you know I'm not a fan of liquidating assets that are long-term investments. I don't like to do that. I'm not going to do it, right? So I just make sure that I've done what I need to do in order to take care of myself if there are tumultuous times in my personal life. To me, that seems perfectly reasonable and the right approach. So I still believe XRP at some unknown point in the future, it's going to hit its all-time high. It's going to enter price discovery. I just don't pretend to know when. But you better believe I'm going to load up on crypto if given the opportunity to purchase even lower than this. Let me know what you think below. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything that I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.